Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. We are here today to speak specifically to large employers. There has been a lot of confusion around ERC for any size employer, and throughout the pandemic and post pandemic, we have at Leighton been trying to provide as much education around ERC so that as many people as possible can take advantage of this great relief method that the government has put in place. But it doesn't come without its complications. So the plan for today is to walk through what ERC is for those of you who do not know. And then we'll walk through some changes that were made this year that a lot of large employers don't know about. And hopefully you'll leave this wanting to schedule some time to see the benefit that's available to you. So I'm going to get right into it. The employee retention tax credit is what we're here to talk about today. And it's known in the market as ERC or ERTC. And it was something that was put in place in reaction to COVID under the CARES Act. And it is to help employers who kept employees on their payroll during the pandemic and during COVID. They can receive a maximum of up to $26,000 per employee. There are a number of stipulations. On average, we've seen a good way to average it out is about $5K per employee. And there were a lot of rules that changed during 2020 and 2021. So we always advise that if you looked at it in the beginning of the pandemic and then you didn't look again because you didn't think it was applicable to you, it's great and it's advantageous to take a second look because things changed, and why not? I mean, even if there's 30, 40, 50K on the table, scoop it up. So the way in which you qualify for the employee retention tax credit is if you experienced a significant decline in gross receipts. This is measured on a quarterly basis. So if in 2019, for Q1, your gross receipts were 20% or lower, in that same quarter in the following year, so Q1 2020, then that'll put you into eligibility for that quarter. And they're all measured on a quarterly basis over the 2-year span. If your business had to fully or partially close due to COVID-19, you're put into eligibility. And then there are some other ways in which you qualify, like if you're impacted by supply chain issues in a pretty significant way, or if you had to really change your processes because of PPE mandates. So if you had to take extra precaution, or you could only have 5 people in your building as opposed to 20 like you used to because of COVID prevention measurements, that will also take that into consideration. So it's not both, it's either or, a decline in gross receipts or closure. And we look at them on a quarterly basis. So in one quarter, you could have had a decline in gross receipts, and then in the next quarter you were up, but your business had to close. So that will put you into qualification. So it's not both, it's either or. Another important thing to note is that this credit can be claimed retroactively. So if you missed out, you didn't actually miss out because you can still claim it. And then there are some interactions with PPP loans and with other tax credits, so you can't double dip. What we can help you do as a firm is figure out what's going to be of the most benefit. Is it going to be best to claim ERC, or is it best to claim a different tax credit? And we'll see where those wages will yield you the best tax credit. But for those where you did claim your PPP loan, you can't include those salaries in ERC. It's not to say that there's not still good opportunity for you, but it might just be decreased. But it's definitely still worth looking at. I'll get into some examples later in the presentation where people did claim both the ERC and their PPP loan, and it was still of massive benefit to them. And then the wages that we look at when calculating the ERC are the salaries and wages, bonuses, tips, and then health insurance cost. Now, here's what we're here to really share and enlighten large employers on today, and that is the large employer threshold. So the rules that like general public might have often vary from the rules that the IRS has. And that's why this is super important to highlight and why we're putting on a webinar to talk about it. So a full-time employee in the eyes of the IRS is someone who worked an average of at least 30 hours per week or 130 hours per month. I think most of us typically assume 40 hours per week is a full-time employee. Part-time employees are not taken into consideration in any way for the large employer / small employer determination. So what we've seen happen often is that people will look at how many employees they have as a total business, and that often includes some part-time employees. If you back them out, you might actually be put in the under 500 category, making you a small employer, and then making you eligible for it, a pretty massive benefit when it comes to ERC. So this is definitely worth taking a second look at and calculating. One thing to keep in mind that this rule changed in between 2020 and 2021. So in 2020, the rule was that you need less than 100 full-time employees to be considered a small employee. But in 2021, the rule changed to you need less than 500 full-time employees to be considered a small employer. So we wanted to just put this in words for you guys, or supply a visual about the small employer threshold example. So this company would have been considered a small employer for 2021, but because they averaged less than 500 full-time employees in 2019. So as you can see, in January, they had 300, 450, 350, 600. And the way that the IRS calculates it is not based on the actual number in the quarter. It's an average. So the average of this, when you add it up, divided by the 12 months for that year, they're actually a small employer. So now we're going to head into the case study portion of our presentation. And we wanted to highlight an ERC opportunity that was overlooked. And this is a real example. There was a company with 625 employees in 2019, and they completely disqualified themselves for ERC because they were considering themselves as a large employer. The owner was unaware of the full-time employee rule, defining the average of 30 hours for a full-time employee or 130 hours a month, and realized that some of his employees were considered part-time. And 625 employees then became 375 employees in the eyes of the IRS, and the claim went from 0 to over $7 million. That is a massive mistake and something to overlook. But I think what is most important to highlight here is that A, it's retroactive, so that's great. You can still capitalize on this. And B, this is super complicated claim. And it's complex. Most folks, whether you are a CFO or a CPA, you're not supposed to know the rules inside and out. That's what firms like Layton and specialist firms are here for, to make sure that we are completely understanding the IRS rules and regulations, making those gray areas, turning them into black and white, and providing this service so people can take advantage of this benefit, which is so needed and meaningful to businesses all over the US. Another case study, we worked with a client in the education industry. We can't share names, but they were, I believe it was a private school. They had a significant decline in gross receipts of 20% compared to their 2019 year. They claimed the first 2 quarters of 2021 year. They had a small PPP loan compared to payroll wages incurred. They had 108 employees and they got back 1.1 million. So this is, of course, significant, and funds needed to help this school get back into where they need and where they want to be. And then we worked with a hotel. This is actually a pretty interesting story that is on our website. If you want to read the full case study, this name we can share. This is Lark Hotels. They had a really significant decline in gross receipts, obviously, given the hotel industry. Travel was non-existent in the very beginning of COVID. They ended up claiming the second quarter of 2021. They had taken regular sized PPP loans, which did sort of diminish the ERC claim that they were able to get. But they claimed a few hotels with us. They have got about 40 in total in their group. I think they had claimed about 5 or 6 when we did a case study with them, and they got back $300,000. What's pretty cool about this case study is that they were able to take that money and have them fund some of the opening of their newer hotels. So, I mean, this is truly, this sort of brings it all home and makes it full circle. This is why the government has put this in place to help businesses get back to a period of growth rather than regression. And then here we've had some recent clients that we've finished our claims for, and I just wanted to highlight the impact again and the benefit of taking a second look. So this telecommunication company, 38 employees, they got back 550,000. A brewery, their ERC claim yielded them 220,000. A parking service company got back 435,000. Utility contracting company with 21 employees got back 335. A healthcare organization with 390 employees got back 435. A high school got back 1.4 million. A summer camp got 270,000. And then a dental practice got back $680,000. So there's, no limit to who can benefit from this as far as industry type. You just have to fall within those parameters that we had mentioned before, which is a closure, a full closure or partial closure, or a decline in gross receipts. Just a little bit about Layton and what we do here. We are a global consultancy. We established ourselves 25 years ago. We opened our first office in France, and as the research and development tax credit became a permanent part of each country, we open up an office there. So we opened up our office here in the United States back in 2015, and initially we were providing the research and development tax credit services, which we still do. And now we've branched out to also provide service for the employee retention credit, energy efficiency products, sales and use tax consulting. So our business is growing as we see the need for it in the United States. We have a number of tax attorneys and professionals who work specifically on ERC. They've created algorithms and workbooks so that we can calculate the credit appropriately and make sure that we're maximizing the amount that our clients can get back. And then I don't know if this is necessarily public knowledge to most, but the statute of limitations for the audit window for ERC has been extended, and it likely means that it will be looked at by the IRS. So to do this correctly is definitely in a business's best interest. This is not something that you want to be scrambling to collect paperwork 5 years from now. So we take that approach. We calculate this within the code and the regulations of the IRS. And we also provide audit support if there are any sort of questions that might come up. We're proud to provide that for our work because we are very confident in the quality of it. So I will open it up to any questions that anyone has, and I thank you all for listening. All right, well, if there are no questions, I will wish you all a fabulous day and hope to be speaking to many of you soon. There's a link that we've dropped in the chat if you guys would like to book a meeting to speak with a specialist. And just, have a discovery call to answer questions and see how you might qualify as a large employer or even as a small employer. Thanks so much. Have a great day.